The parade ground became a frozen tableau of disbelief. 1,200 boots locked in formation, 1,200 pairs of eyes witnessing what would destroy careers, rewrite regulations, and echo through military barracks for generations. At the epicenter lay Admiral Harrison Blackwell, unconscious on the ceremonial dirt, his pristine dress whites stained with Virginia clay, his cover rolling toward the color guard like a severed crown. Captain Jenna Keller stood above him, hands clasped behind her ramrod-straight spine. Her right knuckles pulsed with pain, her left cheek burned where his open hand had struck 30 seconds earlier. But when she spoke, her voice carried across that stunned silence with the precision of a final transmission. "I will accept the consequences." Nobody moved, nobody breathed. History had just fractured. But what brought a decorated Marine captain to this breaking point? Quick pause before we continue. If you're watching this from somewhere in the world right now, let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if you're enjoying stories like this, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because tomorrow's episode, it goes even deeper than this. 21 years earlier. Fallujah, Iraq. November 2004. The television cast blue light across the darkened living room where 11-year-old Jenna sat cross-legged, homework abandoned, watching Marines move through devastated streets. Dust hung like fog. Gunfire echoed through the speakers. Her mother stood in the kitchen doorway, dish towel twisted in trembling hands, face bone white. The doorbell rang at exactly 1900 hours. Jenna would remember that precision forever. The military dealt in certainties, and a doorbell at 7 p.m. meant only one thing. Two Marines stood on the porch in dress blues. The older one, a captain with gray temples, held a folded flag against his chest. The younger gripped a manila envelope like it might dissolve. Neither looked at Jenna. They focused on her mother with the terrible compassion of messengers who delivered this news before, and would deliver it again. "Mrs. Keller," the captain began, his voice formal and gentle, "the Commandant of the Marine Corps has entrusted me to express his deep regret." The words blurred into official phrases. Honorable service, combat operations, hostile action. The flag transferred from the captain's hands to her mother's. 13 folds, 50 stars, the physical weight of a life compressed into cotton and symbolism. Jenna's mother collapsed into a chair. The younger Marine steadied her. The captain knelt to Jenna's eye level, his voice dropping to something almost gentle. "Your father was the finest Marine I ever served with. He saved his entire convoy, took position on a rooftop, held off enemy fire for 40 minutes while his brothers got to safety. The family resemblance was unmistakable. That's his son. Captain Nathan Blackwell died in 2009, training accident at Quantico. Female sniper trainee misidentified a target on a live fire range, sent a round through Nathan's chest instead of the practice target downrange. Kid bled out before the medevac arrived." Jenna's stomach went cold. "I didn't know that." "Not many do. Blackwell buried it deep, but something broke in him after that. Started seeing enemy action everywhere women served in combat roles. Filed complaints, blocked promotions, made life hell for every female officer who crossed his path." Steele leaned back, studied her. 2 years ago, you were his intelligence officer in Afghanistan. Top marks, commendations, slated for promotion. Then you witnessed something you shouldn't have. He was meeting with contractors from Titan Defense Systems, late at night off the books. I was running route analysis for next day's patrol, saw them through the command tent flap. They handed him an envelope, thick. He didn't report it through channels. And you filed a report through proper channels, like a good Marine. Yes, Sergeant Major. And 3 weeks later you were transferred stateside, your sniper specialty reclassified, your promotion packet disappeared into administrative hell. Jenna set down her coffee cup, stared at the table. I thought I was doing the right thing. You were. That's why you're dangerous. Steele gathered the photographs, slid them back into a folder. I served with your father in Mogadishu, 93, Black Hawk down. Things went sideways fast. We were pinned down, ammunition running low, insurgents closing in. Marcus took position on a rooftop with an M14, started picking them off. 1 shot, 1 kill, bought us time to extract. He saved my life and 12 others. He stood, walked to a cabinet, pulled out a bottle of bourbon that probably cost more than a month's pay, poured 2 fingers into 2 glasses, handed one to Jenna. Your father told me something that day, said, Steele, the hardest thing about being a Marine isn't the fighting. It's knowing when to fight even when every regulation and every superior officer is telling you to stand down. He raised his glass. He lived that code, died for it in Fallujah. You've got his blood, his instincts, his stubborn refusal to run from a fight. So what do you see coming? Blackwell didn't request you for ceremonial duty because he needs a good Marine. He requested you because he wants to destroy you publicly, permanently. This Medal of Honor ceremony is high-profile, press coverage, senior leadership attendance. He's going to do something that ends your career in front of witnesses, and there won't be a damn thing you can do about it without looking insubordinate. Jenna drank the bourbon. It burned clean and righteous. So what do you recommend? Refuse the assignment, claim medical issue, family emergency. Anything, run, survive. She set down the empty glass, met his eyes. My father didn't run from a rooftop in Fallujah when he could have. I won't run from a parade ground in Norfolk. Steele studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Something like pride flickered across his weathered face. Yeah, that's what I figured you'd say, just like Marcus. He reached into his desk drawer, pulled out a small notebook, scribbled something, tore out the page. This is the private number for a JAG officer, colonel named Patterson, good man. If things go sideways, you call him immediately. Don't wait. Don't try to handle it yourself. Jenna took the number, folded it carefully, slipped it into her pocket. Thank you, Sergeant Major. Don't thank me yet, just promise me one thing. Sir, whatever happens out there, you remember who you are. You're Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Keller's daughter. You're a Marine Scout sniper with 47 confirmed kills and a combat record that would make most men weep. You've earned every inch of ground you stand on. His voice dropped, went rough. Don't let some broken-down admiral with an axe to grind take that from you. I won't. Good. He walked her to the door, paused with his hand on the knob. One more thing. That 1,847-yard shot you made in Helmand Province, the one that took out the Taliban commander and saved that army convoy. Jenna's pulse kicked up. She'd never discussed that shot outside of classified debriefs. How do you know about that? Because I still have friends in high places. And because that shot is the best piece of long-range marksmanship I've seen in 40 years of service. The ballistics alone were insane. Wind, elevation, target movement, no spotter backup. He smiled, cold and sharp. Blackwell knows about it too. Read your classified file. That's what really scares him. Not that you're a woman, that you're better than any man under his command ever was. The door closed. But Jenna didn't know that Blackwell's plan was even more sinister than Steele suspected. The next 48 hours blurred together in controlled rush. Uniform inspections. Manual of arms drills with M1 Garand ceremonial rifles, wood and steel from another war, another generation, polished until they gleamed like promises. The weight felt different from her M40A5. Heavier, less familiar, but the fundamentals remained. Balance, breathing, precision. Lieutenant Montgomery ran the platoon through synchronized movements until every step landed in unison. Every rifle movement cut the air at identical angles. The younger Marines struggled with the archaic 8-count drill. Too many years with modern weapons, modular systems, practical warfare. Ceremony felt foreign to them. Jenna walked the ranks, making corrections. A lance corporal's grip too tight on the barrel. A corporal's shoulder angle off by 3 degrees. Small failures that would compound into visible sloppiness. "Why do we use these old rifles, ma'am?" The question came from a 19-year-old private whose name tape read Williams. He looked genuinely curious, not disrespectful. Jenna lifted her own M1 Garand, felt its weight settle into her hands. "Because the men who carried these into Normandy, Iwo Jima, the frozen Chasen, they bled for ground we take for granted. Using their weapons in ceremony honors that sacrifice. It says we remember, we carry what they carried, even if just symbolically." She met his eyes. "You understand, Private?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good, now fix your thumb position before you give yourself Garand thumb when that bolt slams home." Williams adjusted his grip quickly, wisely. The drills continued hour after hour. The Marines grew sharper, their movements synchronized. By the second evening, they looked like something their grandfathers would recognize. Warriors who understood that performance mattered, that eyes were watching, that history judged the living by how well they honored the dead. Jenna called halt at 1900 hours, dismissed them to evening chow. Montgomery lingered, rifle still at port arms, sweat darkening his collar despite the cool Virginia evening. "Ma'am, can I speak freely?" "Always, Lieutenant." "The men are talking." "Rumors about why Admiral Blackwell specifically requested you. About your time in Afghanistan. About," he hesitated, "about him having it out for you." Jenna began disassembling her Garand, methodical and calm. "And what do you think, Lieutenant Montgomery? I think you're the best officer I've ever served under. I think you know more about tactical operations, marksmanship, and leadership than most people learn in 20 years. I think if Admiral Blackwell has a problem with you, it says more about him than it does about you." He paused. "But I also think he's a flag officer with enormous power and you're a captain with a target on your back." "Accurate assessment." She set down the rifle components, gave him her full attention. "So what would you do if you were me?" Montgomery considered carefully. He wasn't stupid, just young. "I'd be smart, politically careful. Keep my head down, execute the mission flawlessly, give him no ammunition." Spoken like an officer who wants to make major. She didn't mean it cruelly. "But sometimes, Lieutenant, the mission isn't about safety. It's about standing your ground when everyone's telling you to retreat. My father taught me that, died proving it. I won't dishonor his memory by running from a bully with stars on his collar. Even if it costs you your career. Especially then." She smiled, thin and cold. "Dismissed, Lieutenant. Get some rest. Big day coming." He saluted, left. The armory fell quiet. Jenna finished cleaning the Garand, reassembled it, racked it with the others. Then she pulled out her personal weapon, the M40A5 that had been her constant companion through 3 deployments, 47 confirmed kills, and 1 impossible shot that had changed everything. She didn't clean it. It was already perfect. She just held it, felt its weight, remembered. And in that memory lived the secret that terrified Admiral Blackwell more than any report or investigation ever could. Part 6. The Impossible Shot, Helmand Province, Afghanistan. 2018. The heat rose in waves that bent light and made distances lie. Jenna lay prone in a depression of rock and sand, ghillie suit blending her into the landscape. Rifle rested on a low bipod, scope dialed to maximum magnification. 1,700 meters downrange, through a gap in the ridgeline, she could see the village. Mud brick buildings, narrow streets, and somewhere in that maze, a man responsible for 14 American deaths. Her spotter, Corporal Jensen, lay beside her, calling wind and distance through cracked lips. They'd been in position for 36 hours. No water left. Food gone. Radio check-ins every 4 hours to confirm they were still breathing. Then the call came through. Convoy moving through the valley, 3 clicks north. Ambush likely. Taliban commander confirmed in the village, planning to trigger the attack personally. High-value target. Clearance to engage. Range 1,847 yards, Jensen muttered, consulting his data. Wind 8 miles per hour, variable, temperature 94 degrees, barometric pressure 29.8, target elevation 60 feet above your position. He paused. And he's moving. The Taliban commander appeared in the scope. White robes, dark beard, AK-47 slung over his shoulder, walking between buildings with the casual confidence of a man who believed himself untouchable. At this distance, he was the size of Jenna's thumbnail. "You can't make this shot," Jensen whispered, not doubt, just mathematics. "Cold bore, no warm-up, moving target, distance outside any training parameters. The variables are too unstable. Call the wind. Jenna, call it." Jensen swallowed hard, put his eye back to the spotting scope. Wind 8 miles per hour, 11 o'clock. Steady. Target moving left to right, approximately 2 miles per hour walking speed. You'll need to lead him by 3.5 meters minimum, maybe 4. Jenna's world contracted to breath and mathematics. Distance, 1,847 yards. Wind value, 2.1 mils right. Elevation, 6.3 mils up. Target movement requiring a lead of 3.7 mils. Barometric pressure slightly low, reducing bullet velocity, adding maybe 2 mils to elevation. Temperature high, expanding air, increasing bullet drop. Coriolis effect at this latitude minimal but real. She dialed the scope. Click, 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 each adjustment a prayer in metal. The Taliban commander stopped walking, turned, faced her direction, though he couldn't possibly see her. He pulled out a radio, started speaking. Convoy ambush imminent. 3 minutes, maybe less. 11 American lives in the balance. Jenna settled the crosshairs. The commander's chest filled the reticle. She shifted slightly, leading his position by 3.5 mils, trusting instinct and math in equal measure. Hold steady. Her pulse slowed. 50 beats per minute. 45, 40. Breathe. 4 counts in. Hold. 4 counts out. Hold. The rifle rose and fell with her chest like they were one organism breathing together. Squeeze. The trigger broke clean. The rifle recoiled. The sound cracked across the desert like judgment. 3.2 seconds of flight time. Jenna watched through the scope, perfectly still, as the bullet traced an arc invisible to the naked eye. Climbing, falling, drifting in the wind, mathematical and inevitable. The Taliban commander's chest exploded in red mist. He dropped like a puppet with cut strings. "Holy," Jensen breathed. "Holy." Confirmed kill, target down, convoys calling in ambush aborted. They're asking who made the shot." Jenna's voice came out steady, professional, empty of emotion. "Ghost 6 actual, confirm 1 hostile KIA, threat neutralized, convoy is clear to proceed." "Copy that, Ghost 6, that's 47 confirmed, outstanding work." She lay there for another hour, watching through the scope as insurgents found the body, panicked, scattered. The convoy rolled through the valley unmolested. 11 Americans went home alive that night. Later, after exfil, after debrief, after her hands stopped shaking from adrenaline crash, the battalion commander pulled her aside. "That shot will never go in any public record," he said quietly. "Too sensitive, too classified, but I want you to know I've been in this business 30 years. I've seen the best snipers in the world. What you did today was impossible. Mathematically, physically, by every training standard we have, impossible." "Yes, sir." "So how did you make it?" Jenna thought about her father on a rooftop in Fallujah, holding ground against impossible odds, about promises made to ghosts, about the difference between what regulations said and what honor demanded. "I held steady, sir. I breathed. I squeezed." The commander nodded slowly. "Your father would be proud." "Maybe, but Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Keller was 17 years dead, sleeping under Arlington marble beyond pride or disappointment or anything except the silence that followed heroism." Jenna never spoke about the shot again, until Admiral Blackwell read her classified file and decided to weaponize it against her. Norfolk Naval Station. The morning of. Jenna arrived at 500 hours, 3 hours before ceremony start time. The parade ground stretched empty in pre-dawn darkness, spotlights casting long shadows across manicured grass. Bleachers rose in tiers along one side. A stage stood at the far end, draped in red, white, and blue bunting. Cameras already positioned. This was going to be broadcast, recorded, immortalized. She walked the perimeter, checking sightlines, exits, potential problems, old habits from tactical planning, know the ground, understand the terrain, identify where threats might emerge. Lieutenant Montgomery found her near the color guard staging area, both of them too wired to sleep, too disciplined to show it. "Marines are assembling now, ma'am. Uniforms inspected, rifles checked. We're ready." "Good." She adjusted her own dress blues, made sure her ribbons sat perfectly aligned. Afghanistan Campaign Medal, Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal. Rows of fabric representing years of service, sacrifice, choices that had led inexorably to this moment. "Ma'am," Montgomery's voice dropped. "Whatever happens today, I want you to know the platoon has your back." She met his eyes, saw the loyalty there, the fierce protectiveness of a young officer who still believed in honor and justice. God, she hoped the Corps didn't beat that out of him. "I know, Lieutenant. That means more than you realize." Troops began arriving, 1,200 Marines in dress blues moving into formation with practiced efficiency. The color guard took position, 8 Marines carrying flags that represented everything they'd sworn to defend. Jenna joined them, rifle at port arms, spine straight, eyes forward. The sun climbed. The bleachers filled. Families, veterans, retired officers wearing their old uniforms, chests heavy with medals from forgotten wars. At precisely 7:45 hours, a black sedan arrived. The guest of honor emerged, 95 years old, thin as wire, back bent but eyes fierce. His suit hung loose on a frame that had once stormed beaches and climbed volcanic ash under machine gun fire. The Medal of Honor rested against his chest, that pale blue ribbon and bronze star that represented the absolute pinnacle of American military valor. Corporal Edwin Price, Iwo Jima, 1945. He'd charged a Japanese bunker alone, thrown in grenades, cleared the position with rifle and bayonet, held it against counterattack for 4 hours while his platoon regrouped. 75 years later, his hands still trembled. The ceremony would honor him, recognize his sacrifice, remind a new generation what their grandfathers had endured. Jenna felt something twist in her chest. This should be sacred, pure, a moment outside politics and personal grudges. At exactly 800 hours, Admiral Harrison Blackwell stepped onto the parade ground. He wore his dress white summer uniform, gold braid on the shoulders, rows of ribbons dominated by the distinctive red, white, and blue of the Navy Cross. 61 years old, but he moved with rigid intensity, someone who'd kept himself sharp through sheer force of will. Gray hair cropped tight, jaw like granite, eyes that scanned the assembled troops with predatory focus. Those eyes found Jenna, held, something cold and satisfied flickered across his face. The trap was set, and Jenna Keller was walking straight into it. The ceremony began, national anthem, invocation. Speeches about duty and sacrifice and the unbroken chain connecting today's warriors to the heroes of the past. Corporal Price sat on the stage, looking small and fragile and somehow immortal. Then Blackwell took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, active duty personnel, veterans, honored guests, today we celebrate the extraordinary valor of Corporal Edwin Price, but we also remind ourselves that the standards he exemplified must be maintained. His voice carried across the silent field. Excellence in combat requires more than just physical presence. It requires truth, integrity, the absolute certainty that those who wear this uniform have earned their place through genuine accomplishment, not inflated records or political correctness. Jenna's pulse spiked. She kept her face blank, rifle steady, but her knuckles whitened on the barrel. Blackwell continued. Recently, stories have surfaced about questionable combat achievements. Claims of extraordinary marksmanship that strain credibility. Records that, upon closer examination, appear fabricated to advance certain agendas. He stepped down from the stage, began walking along the ranks, inspecting, judging, moving with calculated deliberation toward the color guard, toward Jenna. We owe it to heroes like Corporal Price to maintain absolute standards. No compromises, no exceptions, no stolen valor masquerading as legitimate service. He stopped directly in front of her. 1,200 pairs of eyes watched. Cameras recorded. This was the moment. The ambush Steele had predicted, the public destruction of her career, her reputation, everything she'd bled for. Blackwell's voice dropped to something just above a whisper meant only for her. Your father died for nothing in Fallujah, a grunt on a rooftop playing hero, just like my son died because women like you insisted on playing soldier. The words hit like bullets. But Jenna had been trained for worse. She kept her eyes forward, face expressionless, breathing controlled. Hold steady. Blackwell leaned closer. His breath smelled like coffee and rage. That 1,847-yard shot you claim to have made? Impossible. Fabricated. I'm recommending a formal investigation into your entire service record. By the time I'm done, you'll be lucky to avoid prison for stolen valor. His hand moved fast. Open palm. Slap cracked across Jenna's face like a rifle shot. The parade ground went silent. Time fractured. Jenna staggered half a step, the M1 Garand nearly slipping from her grip. Her cheek burned, her vision blurred. Somewhere in the shocked silence, someone gasped. Cameras kept recording. 1,200 witnesses stood frozen, not believing what they'd just seen. An admiral striking a subordinate officer in front of the world. Blackwell straightened his uniform, satisfied. "You're dismissed, Captain. Return to your quarters. You're relieved of." He raised his hand again, fist this time, moving to strike. And something inside Jenna Keller, something compressed and controlled for 21 years since an 11-year-old girl had watched two Marines deliver a folded flag, finally broke free. Not rage, not emotion, just the cold clarity her father had taught her. Hold steady, breathe, squeeze. She moved. The M1 Garand dropped to the ground, forgotten. Her left hand intercepted Blackwell's incoming fist, redirected the force past her shoulder. Her right hand came up, fast and precise muscle memory from 1,000 hours of combat training, and delivered a single controlled strike to his jaw. The impact was clean, mathematical, perfect. Admiral Harrison Blackwell's eyes rolled back, his knees buckled. He collapsed onto the ceremonial grass like a fallen monument, dress whites against green, unconscious before he hit the ground. His cover rolled free, tumbling across the parade ground in the sudden silence. Jenna stood over him, chest rising once with a deep breath, then settling. Her hands moved automatically to clasp behind her back, parade rest position, the instinctive default of a Marine under stress. She looked at the stage at Corporal Price, the 95-year-old Medal of Honor recipient who watched her with eyes that had seen Iwo Jima and understood something about the difference between orders and honor. She looked at Lieutenant Montgomery, whose face showed shock and fear and something that might have been pride. She looked at the 1,200 Marines who had just witnessed history fracture in real time, and she spoke. Clearly, calmly, her voice carrying across the field with the same precision she'd used to call a shot at 1,847 yards. "I will accept the consequences." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. And the silence that had lasted 21 years finally broke. The first person to move was a Navy corpsman. He pushed through the frozen ranks, medical bag already open, dropping to one knee beside Blackwell's unconscious form. Pulse check, airway assessment, professional detachment in the face of catastrophe. His voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Breathing, pulse steady, concussion protocol, I need a stretcher." Two more corpsmen materialized with a litter. They rolled Blackwell onto his back with practiced efficiency, secured his neck, lifted him as one. His head lolled, a thin line of blood traced from the corner of his mouth down to his collar. The dress whites would stain. Jenna watched them carry him away, her hands still locked behind her back, her face absolutely empty of expression. Lieutenant Montgomery appeared at her elbow, voice low and urgent. "Ma'am, we need to move now before—" "Nothing, Lieutenant." The voice came from behind them, hard and official. A full commander in service dress pushed through the crowd, two master-at-arms following. The MAAs had their hands near their sidearms, not quite touching but ready. The commander's name tape read WILCOX. His face could have been carved from stone. "Captain Keller, you are hereby ordered to stand down and accompany these petty officers to the base JAG office for immediate questioning." Jenna didn't resist, didn't argue. "Yes, sir. Your sidearm and credentials." She wasn't carrying a sidearm, ceremonial duty, but she pulled her military ID from her breast pocket, handed it over with steady fingers. Wilcox took it like he was handling evidence at a crime scene, which she supposed he was. Petty Officer Reyes, Petty Officer Takahashi, escort Captain Keller to Building 7, direct route, no stops, no conversations. He turned back to Jenna, and something almost like regret flickered in his eyes. Captain, you are advised that anything you say from this moment forward may be used in court-martial proceedings. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Do you wish to invoke your right to remain silent? No, sir, I will cooperate fully with the investigation. Wilcox nodded once sharp. Take her. The two MAAs moved to flank her, not touching, not restraining, just present. The crowd parted as they walked, 1,200 Marines staring in stunned silence. Some faces showed shock. Others showed something harder to define. Not quite approval, but not condemnation either. Recognition, maybe. The acknowledgement that they'd just witnessed something that would be whispered about in barracks and mess halls for the next 20 years. Jenna kept her eyes forward, her spine straight, her breathing controlled. The parade ground fell away behind her. The ceremony interrupted, shattered, dissolved into chaos she could hear but not see. Officers shouting, families confused. Press cameras swiveling to follow her retreating form like predators tracking wounded prey. The walk to Building 7 took 4 minutes. 4 minutes during which Jenna's mind played the last 60 seconds on repeat, analyzing, cataloging, searching for the precise moment when choice became inevitable. The slap, the raised fist, the muscle memory that had moved faster than thought. Had she had a choice? Yes, she could have stood there and taken the second blow, endured it. Filed a complaint later through proper channels, played the system, survived, but her father's voice echoed in her skull, words spoken a lifetime ago on a rifle range when she was 8 years old and learning to shoot. Jenna, there's a difference between patience and cowardice. Patience is waiting for the right moment. Cowardice is refusing to act when the moment arrives. Don't ever confuse the two. The right moment had arrived. She'd acted. Now came the consequences. Building 7 was a nondescript concrete structure that housed the base legal offices. The MAAs walked her inside, down a corridor that smelled like old coffee and anxiety, into a small room with white walls, a metal table, 3 chairs, and a camera mounted in the corner. The red recording light blinked steadily. "Wait here, ma'am," Petty Officer Reyes said, young kid, maybe 23, trying to sound professional and mostly succeeding. "Someone will be with you shortly." The door closed. Locked from outside with a heavy mechanical click. Jenna sat in one of the chairs, placed her hands flat on the table, and waited. The room had no windows, no clock. Time became elastic, meaningless. She focused on her breathing. 4 counts in, hold, 4 counts out. The same rhythm she used before a long-range shot. The same discipline that had kept her alive through 3 combat deployments. The door opened after what might have been 20 minutes or an hour. A woman entered, late 40s, colonel's eagles on her collar, JAG insignia on her lapel. She carried a leather folder and moved with the controlled precision of someone who'd spent decades navigating military bureaucracy. Her name tape read BNNETT. She sat down across from Jenna, opened the folder, studied its contents for a long moment before speaking. "Captain Keller, I'm Colonel Rachel Bennett, Base Staff Judge Advocate. I'm here to advise you of your rights under the Uniform Code of Military Justice and to conduct a preliminary inquiry into the events that occurred approximately." She checked her watch, 73 minutes ago at the Medal of Honor ceremony. She pulled out a small recorder, set it on the table. This interview is being recorded both by that device and by the camera in the corner. Do you consent to this recording? Yes, ma'am. State your name, rank, and serial number for the record. Captain Jenna Keller, United States Marine Corps, service number 5,847,392. Bennett made a note. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to have counsel present during questioning. You have the right to request that this interview be terminated at any time. Do you understand these rights? Yes, ma'am. Do you wish to invoke any of these rights at this time? No, ma'am. Bennett leaned back, studying her with eyes that had probably seen every variation of human behavior the military could produce. Then let's start with a simple question. Did you strike Admiral Harrison Blackwell? Yes, ma'am. Can you describe the circumstances that led to that action? Jenna kept her voice level, factual, empty of emotion. She recounted the ceremony, Blackwell's speech about questionable combat records, his approach to the color guard, the whispered accusation about her father, the slap, the moment of decision when his fist rose for a second strike. Bennett listened without interruption, taking notes in neat handwriting. When Jenna finished, the colonel set down her pen and folded her hands on the table. You claim self-defense? Yes, ma'am. Admiral Blackwell struck me once, then raised his hand to strike again. I responded with minimum necessary force to neutralize the immediate threat. Minimum necessary force. That's your assessment. Yes, ma'am. Captain Keller, you rendered a flag officer unconscious with a single blow in front of 1,200 witnesses, multiple cameras, and distinguished guests, including a Medal of Honor recipient. The optics here are catastrophic. Do you understand that? Yes, ma'am. And yet you're claiming self-defense against a 61-year-old admiral who, regardless of his actions, holds significantly less combat training than a Marine Scout sniper with 3 combat deployments. Jenna met Bennett's eyes directly. Ma'am, the Uniform Code of Military Justice does not grant flag officers the right to physically assault subordinates regardless of rank disparity. Article 128 defines assault as unlawful physical contact. Admiral Blackwell committed assault when he struck me. He attempted to commit assault a second time. I defended myself. My training is irrelevant to the legality of my response. Something flickered in Bennett's expression. Not quite approval, maybe respect. She made another note. Spoken like someone who's read the UCMJ carefully. My father taught me that regulations exist to protect everyone, ma'am, not just those with power. Bennett nodded slowly. Tell me about your father. The question hit sideways, unexpected. Jenna hesitated, then decided honesty served better than deflection. Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Keller, killed in action, Fallujah, November 2004. He held a rooftop position against enemy fire for 40 minutes to allow his convoy to escape. He was a Marine's Marine, taught me to shoot, to think, to never compromise on what mattered. And what matters to you, Captain? Honor, truth, protecting those who can't protect themselves. She paused. Not allowing powerful men to destroy people simply because they can. Bennett closed her folder, leaned forward. Captain Keller, I'm going to be direct with you. This situation is complicated in ways you probably don't fully appreciate yet. Admiral Blackwell is a decorated officer with 30 years of service and significant political connections. You're a mid-grade captain with a stellar combat record but limited institutional support. The easy path for this command is to crucify you, make an example, move on. I understand, ma'am. I don't think you do. Bennett's voice dropped, became almost confidential. What you don't know is that Admiral Blackwell has been on our radar for some time. Complaints, allegations, nothing concrete enough to pursue but patterns. Your case isn't occurring in a vacuum. There are people, senior people, who want to know the truth about Harrison Blackwell. What happened today might have just given them the opening they needed. Jenna's pulse quickened, but she kept her face neutral. What are you saying, ma'am? I'm saying cooperate fully, tell the truth, don't embellish, don't minimize, and trust that the investigation will be thorough. Bennett stood, gathered her materials. You're going to be confined to bachelor officer quarters pending completion of preliminary inquiries. No communication with anyone outside the legal process without clearance. No social media, no press statements, understood? Yes, ma'am. Good, an escort will take you to your assigned quarters. Expect to be interviewed again, possibly multiple times. Expect this to get worse before it gets better. She paused at the door. For what it's worth, Captain, I've read your service record. The real one, not whatever sanitized version Blackwell tried to circulate. What you did in Helmand Province was extraordinary. Don't let anyone make you forget that. The door closed. And Jenna sat alone, wondering if justice was even possible, or if this was just another battle she was destined to lose. Part 11. Solitary confinement. The BOQ room was small and sterile. Bed, desk, chair, window with blinds drawn. They left her uniform but took her phone, her laptop, anything that could connect to the outside world. The door locked from outside. She was alone with her thoughts and the weight of what she'd done. Jenna sat on the edge of the bed, finally allowing herself to feel. Her hand throbbed where it had connected with Blackwell's jaw. Her cheek burned where he'd slapped her. But deeper than physical pain was something harder to name. Not regret, not quite fear. A kind of freefall sensation, like stepping off a cliff and not knowing if there was ground below or just empty air forever. For the first time in 21 years, she cried. Not loud, not dramatic. Just silent tears that tracked down her face and dropped onto her folded hands. She cried for her father, who died on a rooftop believing his daughter would have a better military than the one he'd served. She cried for the 11-year-old girl who'd made a promise she might not be able to keep. She cried because she was tired and scared and alone in a way that combat had never made her feel. Then she wiped her eyes, straightened her spine, and began planning. Whatever came next, she would face it the way gunnery Sergeant Marcus Keller had taught her, with discipline, with honor, with absolute refusal to surrender ground that mattered. She pulled out the scrap of paper Sergeant Major Steele had given her, the JAG officer's number. She couldn't call, no phone, but she memorized it anyway, repeating the digits until they locked into her memory like coordinates for a target. Hold steady. Breathe, squeeze. The night passed slowly. Jenna didn't sleep. She ran through the incident 1,000 times, examining every angle, every decision point. By dawn, she'd reached a conclusion. She wouldn't change anything. Given the same circumstances, she'd make the same choice. That certainty brought a kind of peace, fragile but real. At 600 hours, a key turned in the lock. A different MAA, older, with the weathered face of someone who'd seen everything twice. He carried a breakfast tray, eggs, toast, coffee, and set it on the desk without comment. "Ma'am, you have a visitor, legal counsel. You've got 30 minutes. Jenna's heart jumped. "I didn't request counsel. Counsel requested you. You can refuse, but I'd recommend against it." "Who is it?" "Major Derek Lawson, JAG Corps. That's all I know, ma'am." The MAA left. Jenna barely touched the food. Her stomach felt like it was filled with broken glass. 15 minutes later, the door opened again. The man who entered was maybe 45, graying at the temples, with the kind of lean build that came from running every morning regardless of weather. He carried a briefcase and moved with controlled intensity, someone who didn't waste energy on unnecessary motion. His eyes swept the room, cataloging exits, camera positions, potential threats, combat awareness. This wasn't a lawyer who'd spent his career behind a desk. Captain Keller. He extended his hand. Grip was firm, brief, professional. Major Derek Lawson, JAG Corps, I've been assigned as your defense counsel for the court-martial proceedings. Court-martial? The word hit like a fist. It's already proceeding to court-martial. Preliminary Article 32 hearing scheduled for 72 hours from now. Formal charges will be announced later today. He sat down his briefcase, pulled out a folder thick with documents. I've reviewed the initial reports. The situation is serious, Captain. You're facing potential charges under Article 128, assault on a superior commissioned officer. Maximum penalty includes dismissal from service, forfeiture of all pay and allowances, and confinement. Jenna's mouth went dry. How long? 10 years. The number hung in the air like smoke. 10 years for defending herself against an assault, for refusing to be a victim, for one moment of controlled violence that lasted maybe 3 seconds. Lawson must have read her expression because his voice softened slightly. That's maximum penalty, unlikely given the circumstances, but we need to prepare for the worst while working toward the best outcome. So I need you to tell me everything, and I mean everything. No editing, no protecting anyone. The truth, start to finish. And so Jenna Keller began to tell her story, knowing that her entire future hung on whether 12 strangers would believe her. Jenna told him everything. From the beginning, her father's death, her career, Afghanistan, the contractor meetings she'd witnessed, Blackwell's retaliation, the forced transfer, the leaked story about her 1,847-yard shot, the ceremony, the slap, the knockout. Lawson listened, taking notes in shorthand, occasionally asking clarifying questions. His face revealed nothing. When she finished, he sat back and steepled his fingers. Okay, here's what we're dealing with. The prosecution will argue that regardless of Blackwell's initial assault, your response was disproportionate. A trained combatant striking an older, less physically capable officer. They'll paint you as a hot-headed warrior who lost control and assaulted a superior officer in front of witnesses. The optics are bad. And our defense? Self-defense. Article 128 allows for defensive force to prevent imminent bodily harm. Blackwell struck you once, then raised his hand to strike again. You responded with minimum force necessary to neutralize the immediate threat. One strike, controlled, then immediate surrender to authority. He paused. The problem is proving immediate threat. A good prosecutor will argue that a 61-year-old Admiral doesn't pose legitimate threat to a 32-year-old combat veteran. He outranks me by 5 grades. He has institutional power I don't possess. Physical capability isn't the only form of threat. True, but not legally relevant under Article 128. We need to focus on the physical assault and immediate danger. Lawson flipped through his notes. What we have in our favor, witnesses, 1,200 of them, and cameras. If the footage shows what you say, 2 attempted strikes, defensive response, immediate surrender, we have a case. Have you seen the footage? Not yet. It's being reviewed by the investigative team. But I've put in a formal request for all video evidence, audio recordings, and witness statements. He leaned forward. Captain, I need to ask you something directly. Did you want to hit Admiral Blackwell? Was there any part of you that saw an opportunity for revenge and took it? Jenna met his eyes. No, sir. I wanted to complete my duty, honor Corporal Price, and go home. Admiral Blackwell forced my hand. I responded to an immediate threat. That's all. Lawson studied her for a long moment, then nodded. I believe you. Now we need to make a jury believe you. That's going to be harder. He spent the next hour walking her through the Article 32 hearing process, how it worked, what to expect, what she could and couldn't say. He gave her homework, write down every detail she could remember, every witness who might support her version of events, every piece of evidence that might corroborate her story. One more thing, Lawson said as he packed up his briefcase. Sergeant Major Victor Steele has been trying to contact you. He can't, obviously, given your confinement status, but he wanted me to pass along a message. What message? He said. Tell her Marcus would be proud, tell her to hold the line, and tell her I'm working angles she doesn't know about yet. Lawson smiled slightly. I don't know what that means, but Steele seems like the kind of Marine who gets things done. He is. Good. You're going to need people like him. Lawson headed for the door, paused with his hand on the knob. Captain Keller, I've been doing this for 15 years. I've defended a lot of Marines in a lot of situations, some guilty, some innocent, some complicated. You strike me as someone who made a hard choice in an impossible moment. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that choice doesn't destroy your career. But I need you to trust me and trust the process. I do, sir. Then get some rest. This is going to get much worse before it gets better. The door closed. Locked. Jenna returned to the bed, pulled out the legal pad Lawson had left, and began writing. Names, dates, details, everything she could remember about the ceremony, about Blackwell, about the 2 years of harassment that had led to this moment. The words poured out like a confession or a battle plan, maybe both. Outside her window, the sun climbed higher. Somewhere on this base, investigators were interviewing witnesses, reviewing footage, building cases both for and against her. The machinery of military justice ground forward, impersonal and inevitable. Jenna wrote until her hand cramped, then kept writing because this was what she could control. The truth, her version of it, the story that needed to be told even if no one believed it. At 1300 hours, the MAA brought lunch. At 1800 hours, dinner, neither meal was touched. Jenna wrote through them both, filling page after page with precise details, reconstructing the event from multiple angles, anticipating questions, building her defense one word at a time. Night fell. The room grew dark. She kept writing by the light of the single desk lamp, refusing to stop, refusing to rest, because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant fear, and fear meant weakness. At 2200 hours, the door opened without warning. Colonel Bennett entered, followed by 2 people Jenna didn't recognize, a commander with intelligence insignia on his uniform and a civilian woman in a dark suit carrying a tablet. Bennett's expression was unreadable. Captain Keller, we need to talk. New evidence has emerged, evidence that changes everything. Jenna set down her pen, straightened in her chair. What kind of evidence, ma'am? Bennett gestured to the commander, who pulled out his own tablet and queued up a video file. Body camera footage from Lieutenant Montgomery. He was standing approximately 15 feet from you when the incident occurred. His camera captured the entire exchange, audio and visual, crystal clear. He turned the tablet toward Jenna and pressed play. The footage showed the parade ground from Montgomery's perspective. Blackwell approaching the color guard, the speech about stolen valor, the approach to Jenna's position. Then, crucially, the whispered words, barely audible on the recording but clear enough to transcribe. "Your father died for nothing in Fallujah, a grunt on a rooftop playing hero, just like my son died because women like you insisted on playing soldier." The slap, the crack of palm on cheek. Jenna's controlled reaction, half step back, then straightening, holding formation. No retaliation, perfect discipline. Then Blackwell's voice again, louder now. "You're dismissed, Captain. You're relieved of," his hand rising. Fist closed, clear intent to strike a second time. Jenna's defensive movement, the intercepted fist, the controlled counterstrike. Blackwell dropping, Jenna immediately stepping back, hands behind her back. "I will accept the consequences." The video ended. Silence filled the small room. Bennett spoke carefully. "This footage definitively establishes 2 attempted assaults by Admiral Blackwell. It establishes that you did not initiate violence. It establishes that your response was controlled and proportionate. From a legal standpoint, Captain, this is as close to perfect self-defense documentation as I've ever seen." Jenna's heart hammered. "So the charges are still proceeding because striking a flag officer, regardless of circumstances, requires formal review, but the evidence significantly strengthens your case." Bennett paused. "However, that's not why we're here at 2200 hours. Show her the rest, Commander." The intelligence officer queued up a different file. This one was audio only. Timestamp showed it was recorded approximately 6 months ago. Afghanistan Forward Operating Base Lighthouse. Voices emerged from the tablet speaker. One Jenna recognized immediately as Blackwell's. The others were unfamiliar but clearly civilian. "I need confirmation on the contract extension. Our board is getting nervous about the timeline." Blackwell's voice, weary and irritated. "I've already told you the body armor contract will be approved. My signature carries weight, but I expect compensation for expediting this through channels." "Of course, Admiral, the payment structure we discussed remains in place, 4.2 million across 3 accounts. Make it 5, and I want guarantees that if any issues arise with the equipment, my name stays out of it." "Understood. Our company takes full responsibility for product performance." A bitter laugh from Blackwell. "Product performance, that's what you call armor that fails ballistics testing. 17 Marines have died wearing your defective vests in the last 8 months. I read the reports. Market conditions require certain cost compromises, Admiral, our shareholders. I don't care about your shareholders, just make sure my deposits clear on schedule." The recording ended. Jenna felt like she'd been punched in the gut. He knew. He knew the armor was killing Marines, and he approved the contract anyway for money. "Worse," the civilian woman said, her voice crisp, professional, and absolutely cold. "I'm Special Agent Andrea Castellano, Naval Criminal Investigative Service. We've been building a case against Admiral Blackwell for 14 months. Financial fraud, acceptance of bribes, conspiracy to defraud the government. This recording was obtained through a confidential informant embedded in Titan defense systems. It's been authenticated and verified. Combined with financial records we've subpoenaed, it's enough to prosecute." Bennett took over. Captain Keller, the reason we're telling you this is because your incident with Admiral Blackwell has accelerated our timeline. The media attention, the public scrutiny, it's forced our hand. We're going to arrest Blackwell tomorrow morning. Formal charges under UCMJ articles and multiple federal statutes. This becomes public in approximately 12 hours. And my court-martial proceeds separately. The law doesn't care about Blackwell's other crimes when evaluating your actions. But politically, practically, the context matters. A decorated admiral who struck a subordinate officer while under investigation for corruption. The narrative shifts dramatically. Agent Castellano leaned forward. Captain, I need to ask you some questions about what you witnessed in Afghanistan, the contractor meetings, any conversations you overheard, financial transactions. Anything that might support our case against Blackwell. Jenna's mind raced. This was the vindication she'd hoped for 2 years ago when she'd filed her initial report. Proof that Blackwell was corrupt, that her instincts had been right, that the retaliation against her career had been about covering crimes, not about gender or politics or any of the lies he'd spread. But it also meant becoming a witness. Testimony. Depositions. Her career even more entangled with Blackwell's downfall. "I'll tell you everything I know," she said quietly. "But I need to understand something first. Those 17 Marines who died in defective armor, do their families know? Do they know their sons and daughters died because an admiral took bribes?" Bennett and Castellano exchanged glances. Castellano answered, "Not yet, but they will. We're working with casualty assistance to prepare notifications. This is going to destroy families, Captain, reopen wounds. Some of those Marines died in operations you were part of." The weight of that settled over Jenna like a physical force. Faces flashed through her memory. Corporal Jensen, her spotter in Helmand. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez from her first deployment. Young Marines who trusted their equipment, trusted their leaders, and died because of corruption. "Then we owe them the truth," Jenna said. "All of it, no matter what it costs." "Agreed." Castellano pulled out a digital recorder. "Let's start from the beginning. Tell me everything you remember about Admiral Blackwell's activities in Afghanistan." They talked for 3 hours. And by the time they finished, Jenna understood that this case was bigger than one admiral's revenge. It was about 17 coffins and the price of silence. The arrest happened at 6:30 hours. Jenna didn't see it, but she heard about it from Major Lawson when he arrived at her BOQ room 90 minutes later. His expression carried the grim satisfaction of a lawyer who just watched the opposition's case collapse in real time. Blackwell was taken into custody at Bethesda Naval Hospital. 4 NCIS agents, 2 Navy JAG officers, and enough media presence to make it a spectacle. Lawson sat down his briefcase, pulled out his tablet. "It's already all over the news. CNN, Fox, MSNBC. Military Times has it as their lead story. Decorated admiral arrested on corruption charges. Your name is in every article, Captain, as the officer who struck him, as the whistleblower who first reported his activities 2 years ago. You're famous." Jenna's stomach churned. "I didn't want to be famous. I wanted to do my job." "Well, you're going to have to accept a certain amount of visibility now. The narrative has shifted. Yesterday, you were a violent subordinate who assaulted a superior officer. Today, you're the Marine who stood up to corruption and paid the price for it." He swiped through news articles on his tablet. "Public opinion is swinging hard in your favor. There's a petition online calling for all charges against you to be dropped. It has 200,000 signatures and counting." Public opinion doesn't determine military justice. No, but it creates pressure, political pressure, the kind that makes generals nervous and politicians pay attention. Lawson closed the tablet, met her eyes. Captain, I'm going to be direct. The prosecution is in a very difficult position. They're still moving forward with your Article 32 hearing because regulations require it. But their case is evaporating. Body camera footage supports self-defense. Witness statements corroborate your version of events. And now Blackwell is facing decades in prison for corruption that directly contradicts his credibility as a witness against you. So you think the charges will be dropped? I think the hearing will proceed. We'll present our evidence. The investigating officer will recommend against court-martial, but nothing is guaranteed. Military justice has its own momentum. He paused. There's something else. We've received over 300 offers of character witness testimony. Marines you've served with, officers who have observed your leadership, even Corporal Edwin Price, the Medal of Honor recipient from the ceremony, submitted a written statement supporting you. That stopped Jenna cold. Corporal Price. He doesn't know me. He knows what he saw, an admiral striking a subordinate officer, a Marine defending herself with restraint and discipline. Lawson pulled out a printed statement. He wrote, and I quote, "I stormed Iwo Jima with men who understood that rank without honor is tyranny. Captain Keller defended her dignity the way a Marine should, with controlled force and immediate accountability. If that's a crime, then we've lost our way." Lawson smiled slightly. A 95-year-old Medal of Honor recipient calling you out as a model Marine. That carries weight, Captain. Jenna felt something crack inside her chest, not breaking, opening. She'd spent 3 days in isolation believing she was alone in this fight, but she wasn't. The Corps, the real Corps, the one made of people instead of regulations, was standing with her. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Now we prepare. The Article 32 hearing is tomorrow at 900 hours. You'll testify. I'll present evidence. Witnesses will be called. It's not a trial, just an investigation to determine if charges are warranted. But it's crucial. This is where we make our case." And tomorrow, in front of witnesses and cameras, Jenna Keller would finally get the chance to tell her side of the story, if the system would let her. The Article 32 hearing took place in a conference room that had been converted into a makeshift courtroom. Long tables faced each other. A raised desk at the front for the investigating officer. Chairs along the walls for observers. The room was packed. Marines in uniform, civilian lawyers. A handful of media representatives who'd been granted access. Every eye tracked Jenna as she entered and took her seat beside Major Lawson. The investigating officer was a colonel named Philip Kellerman, late 50s, combat infantry background, reputation for being scrupulously fair and impossible to intimidate. He reviewed the case file for a moment, then looked up. This Article 32 hearing is convened to investigate charges against Captain Jenna Keller under Article 128 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, assault on a superior commissioned officer. Captain Keller, you have been advised of your rights. Do you understand the nature of these proceedings? Yes, sir, Jenna said, her voice steady. Major Lawson, you represent the accused? Yes, sir. Commander Walsh, you represent the government? The prosecutor stood, mid-40s, JAG career officer, wearing the tight expression of someone who knew his case was weak but had to proceed anyway. Yes, sir. Then let's begin. Commander Walsh, present your case. Walsh laid out the government's position with clinical efficiency. Captain Keller struck Admiral Blackwell, rendered him unconscious. Regardless of provocation, the action constituted assault on a superior officer. The physical disparity between a trained combatant and a 61-year-old admiral made the force used excessive. Court-martial was warranted to address this violation of military order and discipline. It was a competent argument, legally sound in a vacuum, but it ignored context, ignored evidence, ignored the reality of what had happened on that parade ground. Then Lawson stood. "Sir, the defense does not dispute that Captain Keller struck Admiral Blackwell. What we dispute is the characterization of that action as assault rather than lawful self-defense. Article 128 explicitly allows for defensive force to prevent imminent bodily harm. We will demonstrate through video evidence, witness testimony, and Captain Keller's own account that she faced 2 separate assault attempts by Admiral Blackwell and responded with minimum force necessary to neutralize an immediate threat." He clicked a remote. The large monitor at the front of the room flickered to life. The body camera footage played, every detail captured in high definition. Blackwell's approach, the verbal assault, the whispered accusation, the first slap, the crack of impact making several observers wince, Jenna's controlled reaction, no retaliation, perfect discipline. Then the crucial moment, Blackwell raising his fist, clear intent, undeniable threat, Jenna's defensive movement, intercepted strike, controlled counter, Blackwell dropping. Jenna immediately standing down. "I will accept the consequences." The video ended. Silence filled the room. Lawson let it hang for a moment, then spoke. "This footage documents 2 attempted assaults by a superior officer against a subordinate. It documents restraint and discipline from Captain Keller. It documents a textbook example of proportionate defensive force. The government's case requires us to ignore what we can all clearly see." Colonel Kellerman leaned forward. "Commander Walsh, response." Walsh stood, clearly uncomfortable. "Sir, while the video does show Admiral Blackwell initiating contact, the question remains whether Captain Keller faced genuine threat requiring physical response. A 61-year-old officer, regardless of his actions, poses limited physical danger to a combat-trained Marine. She could have absorbed the second strike and reported the assault through proper channels. She could have let him hit her again, Lawson said, his voice sharp with contained anger. That's what the government is arguing, that Captain Keller should have stood there and allowed continued assault because her attacker held superior rank. That regulations somehow obligate victims to endure violence from their superiors. He turned to Kellerman. Sir, with respect, that's not justice. That's institutional endorsement of abuse. Major Lawson, I understand your point. But we must also consider military order and discipline. Then let's talk about order and discipline. Lawson gestured to the monitor. Admiral Blackwell struck a subordinate officer during an official ceremony in front of 1,200 witnesses. He compromised good order and discipline the moment he raised his hand. Captain Keller's response didn't create chaos. It responded to chaos Blackwell initiated. Kellerman made notes. I want to hear from Captain Keller directly. Captain, take the witness chair. Jenna stood, crossed to the chair beside Kellerman's desk, raised her right hand for the oath. Her voice came out steady. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. Be seated. Kellerman studied her for a moment. Captain Keller, in your own words, describe what happened during the Medal of Honor ceremony. Jenna recounted the events, not the sanitized version, the real one, Blackwell's approach, the accusations about stolen valor, the whispered attack on her father's memory, the slap, the moment of decision when his fist rose for a second strike. "I had 3 options, sir," she said quietly. "I could stand there and take the hit. I could retreat and abandon my post, or I could defend myself with minimum necessary force. I chose defense. 1 strike, controlled, then immediate surrender to authority. I didn't pursue additional violence. I didn't retaliate beyond what was required to stop the immediate threat." "You're a trained combatant. You knew 1 strike would be sufficient to incapacitate Admiral Blackwell." "Yes, sir. That's why I used only 1 strike. If I'd wanted to cause serious injury, I had the training and opportunity to do so. I chose the minimum force that would end the threat." Commander Walsh stood. "Captain Keller, isn't it true that you filed a complaint against Admiral Blackwell 2 years ago, that you had a pre-existing conflict with him?" "Yes, sir. I witnessed what I believed to be inappropriate conduct with defense contractors. I reported it through proper channels. And Admiral Blackwell subsequently transferred you and ended your sniper career." "Yes, sir." "So you had motivation for revenge?" Jenna met Walsh's eyes directly. "Sir, if I wanted revenge, I would have taken it 2 years ago, or last week, or any of 1,000 opportunities in between. I didn't strike Admiral Blackwell because of our history. I struck him because he was attacking me and showed clear intent to continue attacking me. My motivation was survival, not vengeance," Walsh pressed. "But you must have felt satisfaction, vindication, finally getting back at the man who ruined your career." "No, sir, I felt regret." Jenna's voice was steady. "Admiral Blackwell was a hero once. He earned his Navy Cross through genuine courage. Watching him fall, literally and metaphorically, brought me no joy. It just made me sad for what he'd become." The answer seemed to deflate Walsh's momentum. He tried a few more questions, but they lacked conviction. Finally, Kellerman dismissed Jenna back to her seat. "I want to hear from witnesses," Kellerman said, "starting with those present at the ceremony." For the next 2 hours, Marines testified. Lieutenant Montgomery described what he'd seen, his body camera footage corroborating every detail. Sergeant Major Steele spoke about Jenna's character, her father's legacy, the pattern of harassment from Blackwell. Other Marines from the Color Guard confirmed the sequence of events. Then Colonel Bennett took the stand and dropped a bomb. "Sir, I'm required to inform this hearing that Admiral Blackwell is currently under arrest on separate charges, including conspiracy to defraud the government, acceptance of bribes, and violations of Article 92. These charges stem from a 14-month NCIS investigation into defense contractor corruption. Captain Keller's initial report 2 years ago was the first indication of these activities. Her subsequent retaliation by Admiral Blackwell is now understood as an attempt to silence a whistleblower." The room erupted in murmurs. Kellerman banged his hand on the desk. "Order." "Colonel Bennett, are you saying Admiral Blackwell's actions toward Captain Keller were motivated by her reporting his criminal activities?" "Yes, sir. That's the NCIS conclusion based on available evidence." Walsh stood quickly. "Sir, Admiral Blackwell's other legal troubles are irrelevant to the question of whether Captain Keller committed assault. They're relevant to his credibility," Lawson countered. "They're relevant to his motivation for attacking Captain Keller." They're relevant to establishing a pattern of retaliation and abuse of power. Kellerman raised his hand. Both counsels make valid points. I'll note the information for my recommendation, but will focus on the specific incident at hand. He checked his notes. I have one final witness I'd like to hear from. Master Gunnery Sergeant Troy Fletcher, please take the stand. An older Marine stood from the observer section, late 50s, weathered face, wearing the kind of ribbons that told stories of decades in the Corps. He settled into the witness chair with the calm of someone who'd testified before. State your name and position, Kellerman said. Master Gunnery Sergeant Troy Fletcher, Chief Instructor, Scout Sniper School, Marine Corps Base Quantico. And you know Captain Keller how? I trained her, sir. She went through Scout Sniper School in 2016, graduated top of her class. I've also reviewed her combat performance records from 3 deployments. And what's your professional assessment of Captain Keller's capabilities? Fletcher didn't hesitate. She's the finest sniper I've trained in 22 years as an instructor, sir. Her technical skills are exceptional, but more importantly, her judgment and discipline under pressure are extraordinary. The 1,847-yard shot she made in Helmand Province, which I understand Admiral Blackwell publicly questioned, has been verified through drone footage, ballistics analysis, and enemy communications intercepts. It's one of the most difficult shots I've ever seen documented. Can you explain why that shot was so difficult? Distance, sir, over a mile, moving target, no spotter backup, heat shimmer affecting visibility, wind variable. Cold bore meaning no warm-up shots to confirm 0. The mathematical calculations required are staggering. Most snipers wouldn't attempt that shot. Captain Keller made it because she had the skill, the nerve, and the absolute discipline to control every variable within her power. Fletcher leaned forward slightly. Sir, I've spent my entire career teaching Marines when to shoot and when not to shoot. The same principles apply to hand-to-hand combat. Captain Keller showed textbook judgment on that parade ground. She absorbed one strike without retaliation. She only responded when the threat continued. And she used precisely the amount of force required. No more, that's not assault. That's perfect discipline under extreme duress. The testimony landed like an artillery round. Even Walsh seemed to have no response. Kellerman dismissed Fletcher, reviewed his notes for a long moment, then spoke. I've heard sufficient testimony. This hearing is concluded. I will submit my recommendation to the convening authority within 72 hours. Captain Keller, you are remanded to your current confinement status pending that decision. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel fell, and now all Jenna could do was wait and hope that truth would be enough. The recommendation came through 72 hours later. Major Lawson delivered it personally, and his expression told everything before he spoke. All charges dropped. Colonel Kellerman found clear evidence of self-defense and determined that court-martial was not warranted. The convening authority concurred. You're cleared, Captain. Jenna closed her eyes, felt the weight lift, just like that. Just like that, you'll be released from confinement within the hour. Your service record will reflect the incident, but also the finding of justified self-defense. You're free to return to duty. Return to duty where? Lawson smiled. That's the interesting part. You've been offered 3 options: Pentagon staff position, instructor role at Quantico, or command of 1st Marine Division Scout Sniper Platoon. The Pentagon offer was political. The Quantico role was safe. The sniper platoon was operational, combat-ready, real leadership. "The platoon," Jenna said without hesitation. "That's where I belong. Thought you'd say that." Lawson extended his hand. "It's been an honor, Captain. You fought this the right way with truth and discipline. Your father would be proud." The handshake was firm, brief, professional. Then Lawson left, and Jenna was alone with the reality of what came next. She gathered her few possessions, changed into fresh utilities, and walked out of the BOQ into Virginia sunshine. No ceremony, no announcement, just a Marine returning to duty after a storm that had changed everything and nothing. Lieutenant Montgomery met her outside with a vehicle. "Captain, good to see you, ma'am." "Good to be seen, Lieutenant. Where are we headed?" "Quantico." "The platoon is waiting." They drove in comfortable silence. Jenna watched the landscape roll past, familiar roads, familiar buildings, the rhythms of a military base continuing regardless of individual drama. Life went on. Missions continued. The Corps endured. At the Scout Sniper compound, Marines worked through training exercises. Rifles cracked at the range. Instructors called corrections. Young warriors learned the ancient mathematics of wind and distance and breath control. Jenna stepped out of the vehicle and the shooting stopped. Sergeant Major Steele stood near the range tower, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Then slowly, deliberately, he came to attention and rendered a salute so sharp it could have drawn blood. The entire platoon followed, 30 Marines snapping to attention, rendering honors to their returning commander. Jenna returned the salute, voice carrying across the range. "As you were." They relaxed, but the moment hung in the air. Recognition, respect. The kind that couldn't be ordered or faked. Steele approached, extended his hand. "Welcome home, Captain. Good to be home, Sergeant Major. Your father would have been proud. What you did, standing up to Blackwell, speaking truth, taking the consequences, that's the kind of leadership the Corps needs." Jenna glanced at the training Marines, then back to Steele. "I didn't do anything special. I just didn't run when running would have been easier." "That's exactly what makes it special." Steele gestured toward the range. "We've got a new crop of Scout Sniper candidates. Young, eager, talented. They need someone to teach them that marksmanship isn't just about pulling triggers. It's about judgment, discipline, knowing when to shoot and when to hold fire. Think you're up for it?" Jenna smiled. "I think I can manage." And in that moment she understood the mission wasn't over. It was just beginning. She spent the rest of that day on the range, working with students, making corrections, sharing the knowledge that had been passed to her by instructors who'd learned it from instructors before them. An unbroken chain of expertise running back through wars and conflicts and quiet times of preparation. At 1700 hours, she secured her rifle, walked to her small office, and sat behind the desk that now belonged to her. The walls were bare except for a single photograph she'd brought from storage, Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Keller in Desert Utilities, squinting against Iraqi sun, rifle slung over his shoulder, looking both young and ancient at once. Jenna pulled out her father's Purple Heart, set it on the desk beside a framed copy of the Marine Corps values. Honor, courage, commitment. Words that meant something only if you lived them when it cost. She opened her laptop, began drafting training schedules for the next week. There was work to do, Marines to train, standards to maintain. The mission continued because the mission always continued. A knock at the door, Lieutenant Montgomery stuck his head in. "Ma'am, there's someone here to see you, says he served with your father." Jenna looked up, curious. Send him in." An older man entered, 70s, lean and weathered, wearing a VFW cap and a jacket covered in patches from units and conflicts. He moved with the careful deliberation of someone whose body remembered war, even if the mind tried to forget. "Captain Keller, I'm James Riley. I served with your father in Mogadishu, 93. I was in the convoy he saved when we got pinned down. Haven't seen you since you were a kid at your dad's funeral." Jenna stood, shook his hand. "Mr. Riley, I remember you spoke at the service. Did I? Hell, that whole day was a blur." Riley shifted weight, suddenly uncertain. "I came because I saw the news, what happened with the Admiral, and I thought you should know something about your father that maybe you didn't. Sir, the night before Marcus died, we were both on rooftop duty, talking to pass the time. I asked him what scared him most about being a parent. You were 11 then, just a kid." Riley's voice roughened. "And he said, the thing that scares me is that someday Jenna will face a choice between doing what's right and doing what's safe. And I won't be there to tell her which to choose." Riley paused. "I told him not to worry, that you'd figure it out. And he said, yeah, she will, because I'm teaching her now. Hold steady, breathe, squeeze. It's not just about shooting, James. It's about life. Stay calm, think, act with precision. That's how you survive and keep your honor intact." The words hit like a physical force. All these years, Jenna had thought her father's final message was about marksmanship. But it was about everything, every decision, every moment when the easy path diverged from the right one. "Thank you for telling me that," she said quietly. "Thought you should know what you did standing up to that Admiral. That was your father's teaching in action. He'd be real proud, Captain." Riley saluted, old school and crisp, then turned and walked out. Jenna sat back down, stared at her father's photograph, felt tears track down her face for the second time in 21 years. But these weren't tears of grief. They were something else. Recognition, completion. The sense that a promise made long ago had finally been kept. She pulled out a sheet of paper, began writing. Not a report, not a legal document. Just a letter to a ghost who'd been gone 21 years but somehow remained more present than most living people. "Dear Dad," the silence ended. "Not with my fist, but with 1,200 voices who found courage to speak truth. You taught me that honor isn't about never falling. It's about standing back up and facing consequences with integrity. I stood, I fell, I got back up. 17 Marines died because Admiral Blackwell valued money over lives. Their families will know the truth now. Justice is slow, but it's coming. You'd say that's what matters. I've been given command of the Scout Sniper Platoon. Same fundamentals you taught me at 8 years old. I'll pass them forward. Hold steady, breathe, squeeze, words that mean everything. I miss you every day. But I'm not that 11-year-old girl anymore, crying in a dark bedroom and swearing never to cry again. I'm a Marine, your Marine, and I'm doing what you taught me to do. I'm finishing the mission. Semper Fi, Dad." Jenna, she folded the letter, slipped it into an envelope, wrote Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Keller, USMC, on the front. Tomorrow she'd take it to Arlington, tuck it against his headstone, let the words find him wherever Marines went when the final mission ended. Tonight she had work to do. Jenna pulled up the training schedules, began making notes. Ballistics class needed updating. The wind reading curriculum required revision. She wanted to add a section on judgment under pressure, on knowing when discipline mattered more than aggression. Hours passed. The base grew quiet. Other offices went dark. Jenna kept working because this was what she did now. What she'd always done. The mission, the calling, The promise to dead men and living Marines that someone would maintain standards, pass forward knowledge, remember why any of this mattered. At 2300 hours, she finally secured her computer, locked the office, and walked out into the Virginia night. The sky was clear, stars visible despite ambient light from the base. Somewhere up there, physics and mathematics governed trajectories, just like they governed bullets. Predictable, reliable, true. She thought about the 1,847-yard shot in Helmand Province, the impossible calculation, the moving target, the moment when faith and science merged into a single trigger pull that saved 11 lives. She thought about the parade ground, the slap, the raised fist, the choice between enduring and defending, different situations, same fundamentals. Hold steady under pressure. Breathe through fear and rage. Squeeze when the moment demands action. Jenna stood on the Quantico rifle range, teaching those principles to a class of new scout sniper candidates. Young Marines, male and female, eager and terrified in equal measure, learning that precision wasn't about strength, it was about control. Distance to target, 1,200 yards, she called out. Wind 7 miles per hour, 10 o'clock, temperature 68 degrees. Calculate your dope and make the shot. The students worked through the mathematics. Elevation adjustments, wind calls, breathing cycles. Some struggled, others excelled. Jenna moved among them, making corrections, offering guidance, passing forward the wisdom that had been passed to her. A young female corporal raised her hand. "Ma'am, what if I miss? What if I do the math right and still miss?" Jenna knelt beside her, adjusted the rifle position slightly. "Then you breathe, you recalculate, you try again." Missing isn't failure, Corporal. Refusing to shoot because you're afraid of missing, that's failure. You understand the difference? "Yes, ma'am." "Good, now make the shot." The corporal settled behind her rifle, breathing slowed, body relaxed, the fundamentals taking over. She squeezed the trigger. Downrange, 1,200 yards away, the target pinged. Center mass. "Outstanding," Jenna said quietly. "That's how it's done. Next shooter." The training continued through the afternoon. When the range finally secured at 1,700 hours, Jenna gathered the students for a final brief. "You're learning to be snipers, but more importantly, you're learning to be decision makers. Every shot you take has consequences. Every shot you don't take has consequences. Your job is to understand those consequences and act accordingly." She paused. "Some of you will face situations where the right choice isn't clear, where regulations and reality don't align. In those moments, remember your training, hold steady, breathe, squeeze, trust your fundamentals, and accept the outcome." "Oorah, ma'am," they called in unison. "Dismissed." The students dispersed. Jenna secured her rifle, walked back toward the compound buildings, and found Sergeant Major Steele waiting by the armory. "Good session today, Captain. The kids are learning. They're motivated. That helps." Steele pulled an envelope from his pocket. "This came for you." Official correspondence from Headquarters Marine Corps. Jenna's stomach tightened. Official correspondence could mean anything. Awards, reprimands, new orders. She opened the envelope carefully, pulled out the single sheet of paper. It was a promotion order. Effective immediately, Captain Jenna Keller was promoted to Major United States Marine Corps. The order cited exceptional leadership under adverse conditions and commitment to the highest standards of honor and integrity. She stared at the paper, not quite believing it. After everything, the assault, the hearing, the media storm, they were promoting her. Steele smiled. "Congratulations, Major, well deserved." "I didn't ask for this." That's probably why you got it. The Corps needs leaders who care more about the mission than the rank. He extended his hand. Your father would be proud. So am I. The handshake was firm, warm, carrying decades of shared understanding between Marines who knew what it meant to serve, to sacrifice, to keep going when everything said to stop. That evening, Jenna drove to Arlington National Cemetery. The grounds were quiet, visitors sparse as dusk approached. She walked the familiar path to Section 60, where the recent fallen rested in perfect rows, then further back to the older sections where warriors from Iraq and Afghanistan and earlier conflicts slept beneath white marble. She found her father's headstone easily, had been here hundreds of times. The inscription was simple: name, rank, dates of birth and death, the Marine Corps emblem. Words couldn't capture what he'd been, what he'd given, but they tried. Jenna knelt, pulled the letter from her pocket, the one she'd written 3 weeks ago. She tucked it against the base of the headstone, held by a small stone to keep it from blowing away. "Mission accomplished, Dad," she whispered. "Admiral Blackwell is facing court-martial. 17 families will get answers. The Corps is better because you taught me never to quit." She placed her hand flat against the cold marble, feeling the connection across death and time and all the distance that separated the living from the dead. "I made Major today, not because I wanted it, because I earned it the same way you taught me to earn everything, through discipline, through honor, through refusing to surrender ground that matters." She paused. "I'm training the next generation now, teaching them what you taught me. Hold steady, breathe, squeeze, they'll pass it forward. Your legacy continues, through me, through them, through every Marine who learns that courage isn't about fearlessness. It's about doing what's right when everything screams to run." The sun dropped below the horizon. Shadows lengthened. Somewhere in the distance, a bugler played taps, that haunting melody that honored the fallen and reminded the living that service continues beyond any individual life. Jenna stood, rendered a final salute to her father's grave, and walked back toward her vehicle. Tomorrow there would be more training, more students, more moments to pass forward the wisdom of warriors who came before. The mission continued, because the mission always continued. 6 months later, Syria Major Jenna Keller's scout sniper platoon deployed to Syria. Counter-ISIS operations. High-risk Overwatch missions protecting Army and Kurdish forces. The kind of work that demanded absolute precision and uncompromising discipline. On a rooftop in Raqqa, 900 yards from a convoy moving through hostile territory, Jenna settled behind her M40A5 rifle and scanned for threats. The summer heat made distance measurements uncertain, wind variable. The civilian presence complicating target identification. Through her scope, she spotted movement. A figure with an RPG preparing to engage the convoy, clear threat, but positioned near a building with civilians visible through windows. The shot was technically possible, but the margin for error was razor thin. Her spotter, a corporal named Santos, called wind and distance. 900 yards, wind 6 miles per hour, 2 o'clock, target stationary. Civilians at risk if you miss. Jenna calculated, breathed, remembered every lesson, every fundamental, every promise made to the living and the dead. "I have the shot," she said quietly. "Cleared hot. Hold steady." The rifle settled into her shoulder, became an extension of her body. Breathe, 4 counts in. Hold, 4 counts out. The world reduced to crosshairs and mathematics. Squeeze, the trigger broke clean. The rifle recoiled. The bullet flew true. 900 yards of arc and precision and faith in fundamentals that never lied. The target dropped. The RPG fell unfired. The convoy rolled past, 11 American soldiers continuing home alive because a Marine on a rooftop had done her job with absolute discipline. "Confirmed," Santos said. "Target down, convoy clear." Jenna didn't celebrate, didn't speak, just chambered another round, scanned for additional threats, and continued the mission. Because that's what Marines did. They held ground. They protected their brothers and sisters. They finished what they started. Later, in the relative safety of the forward operating base, she pulled out a small notebook and made an entry in her personal log. Not official, not for any report, just a record for herself. Syria deployment day 47. Successful overwatch. Convoy protected. Target neutralized at 900 yards. Dad's fundamentals continue to work. Hold steady. Breathe. Squeeze. The mission continues. Always, she closed the notebook, secured it in her pack, and prepared for the next operation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, new moments where discipline and training would mean the difference between life and death. But tonight, on a rooftop half a world away from that Virginia parade ground where everything had changed, Major Jenna Keller allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. She'd kept her promises, honored her father's memory, stood her ground when power demanded surrender. The silence that had lasted 21 years had finally ended, not with rage or vengeance, but with truth spoken by 1,000 voices who'd found courage to stand witness. Justice was slow but inevitable. Honor demanded patience but rewarded persistence. And somewhere in Arlington, beneath white marble and American soil, Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Keller rested easy, knowing his daughter had learned the lessons well. Hold steady through the storm. Breathe through the fear. Squeeze when the moment demands action. The 3 simple rules that governed everything from marksmanship to life itself. The mission continued. It always would. Because that's what Marines did. They finished the fight. Up next, you've got 2 more incredible stories waiting on your screen. If this one hit you, tap to watch the next, and make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. Oh, and drop your city in the comments. I want to see where you're watching from.